All right, we're finishing up our college football bowl picks on the biggest week of the bowl season. I'm Chris Hassel. All 6 New Year's 6 games, including the college football playoff semis coming up. Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell already made their picks for Tuesday and Wednesday games. They like ECU -7.5 in the Birmingham Bowl against Coastal Carolina on Wednesday. They also like Duke -3 against UCF in the Military Bowl, Arkansas -3 against Kansas in the Liberty Bowl, and Oregon -13.5 against North Carolina in the Holiday Bowl. We're going to begin our brand new picks with 3 games on Thursday, December the 29th. Syracuse +10 against Minnesota. Oh, it's Florida State, Danny's school, -9.5 against Oklahoma, and a top 20 matchup in the Alamo Bowl, Texas and Washington. Both guys doing well so far against the spread in bowl games, 11-7-1. Overall, both guys over 20 games over 500, with Brady leading the way. Very, very great season so far for these guys in their picks. So let's get more of them. Danny Kanell and Brady Quinn here on HQ. And let's start with the old Pinstripe Bowl. It will not be warm for Syracuse in Minnesota. It's a 10-point spread here. The Golden Gophers -10. They've won 5 straight bowl games. They've played well under P.J. Fleck in bowl games.
P.J. Fleck in particular, 3-0 versus the spread in their last 3 games. So he's prepared them well for this moment, Danny. And there's something to that. And Mohamed Ibrahim has been phenomenal at the running back position for them. It seems like every time he's in, he rushes over 100 yards. Usually that formula equates to a win for Minnesota. This one is just a question of by how much. And I think when you're looking at what Syracuse is going to present, these are teams that their seasons kind of went 2 different ways. You know, Syracuse has lost 5 of the last 6 games and has really struggled to finish. Sean Tucker, their outstanding running back, who rushed for the 3rd most yards in a career during his career at Syracuse, is not going to be playing in this game. He's opted out. Their next leading rusher, quarterback Garrett Schrader, only 400 yards. So, look, it's going to be an uphill battle as it is. You know, Minnesota's rush defense, one of the best in the country. I'm laying the 10 points. It's a big spread. There's a lot that comes with that. And I know Garrett Schrader can make some big plays in the passing game, but I think P.J. Fleck's team's up for the task.
Syracuse is 7-2 all-time at games at Yankee Stadium. Good vibes. It goes all the way back to 1923. This, to me, comes around the point spread. It's just too many points for me in a bowl game, where I think both of these teams, you'll see good effort from both of these programs. They're both going to be used to cold weather. Obviously, Syracuse doesn't have that far to travel. Minnesota does, but they're going to be used to it. No matter the conditions, I think both teams will be trying to run the football. That's why I tend to like the under as well. But I'm going to lean on Garrett Schrader and Dino Babers here as the head coach of Syracuse to at least keep this in the number. They're 2-0 in Pinstripe Bowls as well that they've won outright. I don't think they win it, but underdogs have been playing pretty well this bowl season, so I'll take the 10 points.
All right, let's move on to the Cheez-It Bowl. It's Oklahoma and number 13, Florida State. Danny, Florida State is given a lot here, almost double digits, 9.5 points.
Same lines of thinking. I think Florida State wins. It opened at 7.5, and it's kind of running the other way. It's up to 9.5. This, to me, is too many points. I'll go ahead and take the Sooners. I look at the Sooners, and they have everything to gain in this game, and the Seminoles have everything to lose. They come in with momentum, 9-3 season. You got Brent Venables' squad desperately needs some sort of good mojo to propel themselves in the offseason. They would love nothing more than to flat out win this game against Florida State. I don't think they do. But I think you'll get an enthusiastic Sooner squad looking to get over that 500 hump, finish the season 7-6. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think Florida State, similar to what they did against the Florida Gators, a team that didn't have as good of a record, was close. Florida State ended up winning. I think Florida State will win this game by a touchdown, but not by the 9.5.
You know, Danny, we talk a lot during the bowl season about teams going in different directions. Florida State won its last 5. You look at the fact that Mike Norvell in his first 2 years, 8 combined wins. They've already got 9 this year, and so it's pretty remarkable to see what he's been able to build. And credit all the folks there in Tallahassee for the patience with Mike Norvell and building this program up. To now you're seeing not only guys really show out in the way Jordan Travis has continued to develop, but even the fact that they're not dealing with opt-out players the same way Oklahoma is in this case. Oklahoma's going to be without both starting tackles, their leading running back Eric Gray, along with Anton Harrison as well, or he was one of their tackles, and Morris, and then Jalen Redmond as well. So when you really chalk it up, I think these teams, especially the way Oklahoma finished the season, losing 3 of their last 4, A lot of things up in the air for this team right now. They really didn't meet expectations. I thought Florida State exceeded expectations this year, and just two teams going in different directions. So a big spread, but I feel much more confident really where Florida State is right now. And I think the only thing that's really going in the way of Oklahoma is the fact that Dylan Gabriel is going to be in some familiar confines. Obviously played his ball at UCF before going to Oklahoma, so he's been in the stadium before, played in that surrounding atmosphere. Outside of that, I'm not really sure what to expect from that offense.
How does that happen, Danny? You got Brady taking your Knowles?
I know, right? Yeah, I don't want to put any bad. I don't like jinxing the Knowles, so I'll go ahead and take it.
It's really odd. I mean, first you weren't patriotic last week. With these picks.
Now I hate
Now you're not
Florida State.
taking your alma mater. It's
right.
unbelievable. What's
Right.
happening?
They're going to win. They'll be fine. They're going to win. They're going to finish 10-win season.
Yeah, it would be 6 straight wins to finish the season for Florida State. Alamo Bowl is a top 20 matchup. Washington has won 6 straight. Texas will not have Bijan Robinson, who's opted out.
Nor Roschon Johnson, who's also another backup running back that should get more credit. But Bijan's, to me, the engine that makes that offense go. Look, there's a lot of big playability from Quinn Ewers to Xavier Worthy with his speed, but just not the consistency that you're looking for. And this is a good Washington defense. I mean, give Kalen DeBoer and his staff a lot of credit for really bringing back the Huskies in short order. I mean, I think one thing I feel confident about in this matchup is the over. Both these teams can score. Ewers down the field throwing the football, Washington as well. You look at the combined losses for Texas this season, by 18 total points. I mean, they played some opponents tough. Alabama in particular, TCU is a part of the playoff, lost to them by 1 score. So Texas can hang around in this one, though, but I think Washington ultimately is the better team. I think that defense for Texas is going to have a hard time stopping Michael Penix, who's had a phenomenal year this year.
I'm going to keep riding the underdogs. I'm going to take the 3 points, take the Texas Longhorns. I think this roster is pretty deep. You mentioned some of the players that aren't playing, but this is where some young talent can rise to the occasion for Sark because the recruiting rankings have been pretty solid for the Longhorns. I think it's one of the big reasons in most power rankings throughout the season, they were ranked higher than they were in the AP Top 25 or even the college football playoff rankings because they didn't deliver on the field with wins. But as you mentioned, they were competitive, tight games. I think this will be another one. I do think you have to give a ton of credit to the job that Kalen DeBoer has done with Michael Penix. Led the country in touchdown passes, been a phenomenal season. He's coming back. They have to be enthusiastic about where the direction of this program is headed. I think this is one of the more compelling, entertaining games that I think comes down to the wire.
UW has won 6 straight bowl games, covered their last 3. Something to think about.
Okay, and 6 straight overall in the regular season. Let's recap a lot of disagreements here from Danny and Brady. They're tied right now in bowl season, but they probably won't be tied after bowl season is done because there's a lot of difference in the picks. They agree on nothing, not a single spread, not a single total so far in the first 3 games that we're picking here. All right, up next, we're going to pick the first New Year's 6 game of the season between Tennessee and Clemson and the team that knocked them both out of playoff contention, South Carolina, facing Notre Dame. All right, we're picking bowl games with Brady Quinn and Danny Kanell. This is December 30th bowls. That's Friday, and there are 5 of them, including the very first New Year's 6 game of the season, Tennessee and Clemson. Also a top 25 matchup, Notre Dame, a slight favorite against South Carolina in the Gator Bowl. But we begin with a little Mayo bath. Duke's Mayo Bowl, it's Maryland and NC State. Virtual pick'em here, NC State -1 at this point. They have failed to cover 5 straight against unranked teams this season. They've had an odd season.
I have no idea how this game's going to go, but I do know this. Both head coaches have agreed to the Mayo bath that Shane Beamer started a year ago. So we will watch what I feel is the worst condiment in the entire world, Mayo.
Yes.
Get dumped on one of these coaches.
Totally
I'm
agree.
with you.
So we've got that. We got
hate
that.
Mayo?
Although I don't like it, but apparently it is a good moisturizer. So
Mayo moisturizer?
yeah, apparently.
Who uses that and where?
No, I've done some research. That's what I've heard.
Really?
Yeah. Supposedly it's good for your hair too. But maybe it's not working so well because I'm not doing so great in that department.
What wasn't working so well was Maryland towards the end of the season.
Right.
They lost 3 of their last 4. They did stomp out Rutgers to finish it on a high note. Talia Tagovailoa now is the all-time career passing leader in touchdowns in Maryland history, so kudos to him. But he'll be without Raheem Jarrett. He'll be without Jacob Copeland. He'll be without Dante Demas through the top wide receivers as they all move on to the NFL draft. So they're going to have to rely heavily on some younger players with less experience, and then Roman Hemby at running back to really carry the load for this team. And I think on the flip side with the NC State, we were talking about it before the segment. Do we know if NJ Morris is going to play? If not, it's going to be Ben Finley. He played well his last time out in that double overtime win versus North Carolina. They're both practicing, but we still haven't gotten word at this point. And obviously, Devin Leary is not a part of the equation. He's transferred. So I think you're picking between which team you just feel like is the better team. Mike Loxley's really struggled versus AP top 25 teams. He's 1-13. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the point here and stick with NC State.
I'm with you on the same side as this one, NC State. And as you mentioned, it doesn't matter whether it's been Leary, whether it's NJ Morris or Finley. This team really has built their identity about being pretty physical, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And they've had some nice wins. They beat Florida State in Raleigh. They beat North Carolina in overtime to finish the season. I feel like I trust this team in a bigger spot more so than I do the Terps. So I'll go ahead and take the Wolfpack here, lay the 1.
So Mayo on your skin, just not in your mouth.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yes. Yes.
Under the eyes.
Yeah.
Rid of the bags
try it out.
there.
Although you got great skin. You don't have to worry about it.
I know, a little mayo. Mayo's good for something, I guess. Not for
right.
eating, though. Let's go to the Sun Bowl on CBS. That would be the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Only game on CBS. It's Pittsburgh and number 18 UCLA. The Bruins favored by 5.5. Chip Kelly's first bowl game in 10 years.
Isn't that crazy? When you think about it, they were supposed to play in the Holiday Bowl last year that got canceled due to COVID. But clearly, look, I feel like UCLA is the better team if DTR plays, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. That's a problem, though. We don't know if he's going to play. He has been practicing. You haven't found out yet whether or not he'd be starting. I am placing this bet based on the fact that I think DTR is going to play. And if not, it will be a heavy dose of Zach Charbonnet, their outstanding running back at UCLA, being able to find some production versus the Pitt defense. And I think offensively for Pitt, they're going to be without their top running back. And as far as the quarterback situation, they're still trying to figure that out because Keaton Slovis has decided to transfer and move on to BYU. So you're going to have some inexperience there. This is a game where I look at it, I think, if DTR plays, it's not going to be close. I think with his dual threat ability and what he's capable of. So again, I think you should wait until you get further notice about this. But I am placing this wager looking at saying I'm going to lay the 5.5 points. I think DTR plays. UCLA finds enough production offensively to go and win this football game. And Pitt's offense has a struggle finding much production.
I think Pitt is a program that struggles as a favorite but thrives as a dog. And I think this is where Pat Narduzzi can really lean into that, saying, hey, no one's picking you guys to win this game. You guys are a heavy underdog. You're playing a big brand school that is sexier than you are, that plays in a prettier city with better weather. They're going to embrace that Pittsburgh mentality that Pat Narduzzi loves, a physical mindset that's going to out-hit UCLA. So 5.5 points for me. I don't know if they get the outright win, but I think they keep it within that number, so I'll take the Panthers.
One interesting note, Nick Patty, who's one of the quarterbacks,
played last year.
He did. He played last year in this game, which is kind of interesting. But he already declared he wants to enter the transfer portal after this game. So it's kind of odd if you're Pat Narduzzi. Do you play a guy who's already told you that he's not going to stick around anymore?
It's like his opportunity to shine, though.
Exactly. The whole thing is really odd. I mean, we're venturing into, I guess this is going to be more of the norm in bowl season with how this is going to work. Yeah.
Let's move on to the Gator Bowl. It features the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the South Carolina Gamecocks. Brady, I'll let you start. Quarterback situation really been the spotlight for this game and moving forward for Notre Dame in the transfer portal.
Yeah, look, talking about South Carolina, no one's finished the season hotter than Spencer Rattler. I mean, really, he played tremendous down the stretch, and he'll be challenged by Notre Dame's defense. That's going to be without one of its best players, if not their best player, Isaiah Foskey, who set the career record for sacks at Notre Dame. It could be a potential first-round pick, so that's a big loss. But they do have depth there. They've developed and recruited well. To me, it's really about the other side of the ball and Tyler Buckner, who after starting 0-2 as the start of this season, got hurt, had that shoulder injury. He's now back into the starting lineup, and this is really his opportunity to shine and prove that he could potentially be the quarterback of the future. But more so than that, his rushing ability, along with what they were able to develop during his absence, and that is a three-headed monster in the backfield, an offensive line that's gelled together, and going up against the South Carolina defense that's really struggled to stop the run this season. And look, offensively for South Carolina, they're going to be without some of their top players. One of their O-linemen, Dylan Wonnum's going to be out, Jaheim Bell, Marshawn Lloyd, their leading tight end, and then running back. Those guys have both entered the portal. And this is a defense, again, that's giving up 192 yards a game on the ground in South Carolina. So I think that's the difference for me. It's a tight spread. I'm going to go ahead and lay the 2 points here with Notre Dame.
I saw that Shane Beamer was saying they can't even run 12 personnel because they don't have enough tight ends. Like, they don't have one tight end, and they're like, we don't even know how much we can play him. But despite that, I think this is a program that is as hot as anybody in the country in the last few weeks of the season. I think they carry over some of that momentum from the big win against Tennessee, from beating their arch rival Clemson in a massive spot. And Spencer Rattler all of a sudden is coming into his own. He's supposedly going to make a decision here about his future, where he's going to end up. I think he should come back. I think he does. But I think they ride his arm in this game and put up some points against Notre Dame. So I'll take the Gamecocks here. What
a finish that would be if they closed the season with wins over Tennessee, Clemson, and Notre Dame, and a bowl victory at that.
It's probably not going to happen.
Hey, Brady's back in his team, even though he didn't back yours, at least not against the spread. Let's go to the Arizona Bowl. Another tight spread here. Ohio -1 against Wyoming. Craig Bohl, the head coach at Wyoming, has been really good in bowl games.
He's been phenomenal in bowl games, and he's going to need to be in this particular one because Titus Swin was dismissed from the team. He was the leading rusher. He's no longer a part of the program. And they've also got injuries at the running back position behind him. If you look at DQ James as long as DeJuan McNeely, both those guys who've rushed over 300 yards, they're injured. They're out for this. So you're looking at a fourth-string running back, and Joseph Brash is going to start. So it may be hard to come by points here, especially considering how they finished the season getting shut out by Fresno State 30-0. So I'm not sure what to expect from Wyoming. I know this. Ohio University is one of the better passing attacks in college football. They led the MAC this year. I know it's not Curtis O'Rourke, but when you looked at C.J. Harris, who came in as his replacement spot duty, he played well. So I'm willing to give the point here, even despite some of the history behind Craig Bohl and Wyoming, how they played in bowl games.
I'm going to fade the MAC here and take Wyoming in this spot. I do think that loss to Curtis Rourke is going to be tough. It's one of the reasons they weren't able to win that MAC championship. I think there is a significant drop-off there. And Craig Bohl, as you mentioned, Hassel, 4-0 against the spread in bowl games under his tenure. I think they'll come out with an impressive performance. I think they'll win the game.
Oh, this one's on Barstool TV.
Is it?
Don't let the kids around there.
Yeah.
You got one of your kids watching our show. This is family entertainment.
That's right.
Here, right?
Yeah.
By the way, Wyoming under has hit in 5 straight games, and you guys are both on the under here at 42.5. All right. Orange Bowl is the first New Year's Six game up. Again, it is on Friday, December the 30th, and it is all orange. In fact, we had to change the Clemson logo to have a purple backdrop because it would just be too much orange here in the Orange Bowl.
A lot of orange in the Orange Bowl once the Orange Bowl takes place. We'll see a lot of that. However, we're not going to get DJU. We're not going to get Hendon Hooker. This matchup would have been great, I think, when you're looking at both those two quarterbacks, had the season gone the way both programs had hoped. It didn't, though. Hooker, obviously, with the injury. DJU now is transferred out to Corvallis and will be at least in the competition for the starting quarterback there at Oregon State next year. So it's Joe Milton versus Cade Klubnik. And Klubnik, to me, really showed out, I think, enough to make you feel more confident what he's capable of. Now, Clemson will be without Miles Murphy as part of that defensive attack. But outside of that, most of their players are intact. You can't say the same for Tennessee. Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, both those guys have opted out for the NFL draft. And Jeremy Banks, a linebacker on defense, has done the same for Tennessee. So that defense struggled to give up plays and production anyway this year. So given that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and lay the 4.5 points here with Clemson.
I'm with you. This was one of my best bets for the bowl season, was laying the points for the Clemson Tigers. What a weird dynamic it is for Clemson fans. Like, if Cade Klubnik goes out there, which I think he will, pick up where he left off in the ACC championship game and put up pretty big numbers against the Tennessee defense, which struggled, aren't you going to be kind of kicking yourself that you didn't make that move earlier and a little frustrated that Dabo stuck so long with DJ Uyunglele? I know it's in the rear view, but I think that's a question some Clemson fans will be wondering after another big performance from Cade Klubnik. Will Shipley will play a big part, as he always does, in this offense. But I also think the culture of this program, we saw it last year with an pretty impressive bowl performance with that everyone buying into it. I think you see it again here. As you mentioned, Brady, Tennessee, limping into the finish a little bit. I do think they lost some of their identity when their stud quarterback, Hendon Hooker, went down. I think it'll be a little bit of a struggle and not quite as much firepower with Joe Milton at the helm.
And we know God is on the side of Dabo and the NIL that he's been preaching there for a long, long time. Let's recap a couple of agreements here, finally, for Brady and Danny. Agree on NC State -1 against Maryland. They both like the over 53.5 in the Sun Bowl. They both like Clemson -4.5 against Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. Again, all those games on Friday. Saturday's the big day, the college football playoff semifinals. The fellas agreeing that one of the underdogs will cover the spread, but will they pull an upset as well? Oh, New Year's Eve's going to be a blast for college football fans and partiers. Hope you started off with just really the main course. Iowa, Kentucky, noon Eastern.
Game of the bowl season.
Total of 31, which by all accounts would be the lowest total in bowl history. You got the Sugar Bowl, Bama and K-State, and then the CFP semis. Let's pick them. Starting with that Music City Bowl. Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell, Chris Hassel. I know Iowa is starting a quarterback that's never taken a snap. What about Kentucky?
Well, Kentucky is going to be potentially playing 3 quarterbacks. So in this case, you're looking at Destin Wade. He's reportedly going to start in this case, but also Deuce Hogan and then Kai Sharon. So all 3 quarterbacks could actually be a part of this, going up against a very stingy Hawkeye defense, one of the best in the country. It's one of the reasons why Iowa's defense combined with UK's and how they can keep things low scoring. I love the under. I think this thing could be a rock fight. I hope it's the under, given where this number sits at right now. And then you talked about, as far as who Iowa's going to be starting, they may know, but it's a freshman quarterback, Joe Labas. I mean, this will be his first start in a bowl game in this position. No Spencer Petras, had shoulder surgery. Alex Padilla is already in the transfer portal. He's gone. And so you're going to look at 2 teams relying heavily on inexperienced quarterbacks playing the position. And UK is going to be without Chris Rodriguez, their outstanding running back. So the defenses are going to highlight this game. Probably the punting, too, if you're an Iowa fan. You've seen that from time before.
Yes, punting.
I love the under. I love the under in this one. I just think when it comes down to it, Iowa will find a way of winning and covering this number, -2.5. They're getting a repeat game of what we saw last year in the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah. God, this game's going to be gross. I'm taking the over, though, principle alone. Like, if I see a total in the 80s, you have to take the under. If I see a total at 31.5, I have to take the over. And for both of these teams, the starting quarterbacks aren't playing, but is that necessarily an awful thing? Both teams have struggled to move the ball offensively. Maybe you see somebody come in with either team and you actually provide a spark on the offensive side of the ball. The other thing that I do think is in play, if these new inexperienced quarterbacks don't excel, pick sixes, those are points, I think that could be in play too. I'm going to go with the physicality of the SEC and say that Kentucky wins this game against your Hawkeyes.
Well, they won last year's game because Spencer Petras was playing quarterback for Iowa. They turned it over 3 times in that Citrus Bowl loss, where they totaled 37 points in that game, and that would take us over. That's the Music City Bowl. Let's go to the Sugar Bowl, which is also New Year's Eve. It's number 5 Bama, nearly a touchdown favorite against Kansas State. They won the Big 12.
Yeah, I think Kansas State exceeded expectations this season. Bama obviously didn't meet their expectations, yet they still sit at number 5 in the country. It just goes to show you how much pressure is on Nick Saban and the rest of the Crimson Tide. However, the most important players to that team are playing this one. That's quarterback Bryce Young, defensive end Will Anderson, and Jahmyr Gibbs at running back. So even though they've got 15 players been in the transfer portal, a lot of those guys just weren't going to probably play next year anyway. So the most important players to Bama's program, they're still intact. They're playing in this one. And look, to be quite blunt, Bama's probably one of the top best 4 teams in the country. I know they're not playing as far to the playoff, but Nick Saban said it best. Would they be favored if they were playing against TCU? No doubt about it. And maybe some of the other teams, too, in the college football playoffs. So that alone leads me to think that this has been a tremendous season for Chris Klieman and his staff. The bottom line is, I think it comes to an end here. I think Bama gets their 11th win of the season, and they cover that spread.
As I reminded Nick Saban that night on social media, I'm sure he was scrolling through my feed.
He follows it.
They were favored against LSU and Tennessee as well, 2 games that they lost.
They've been favored every game by 9 or more. This is the shortest spread of the season.
And they were also heavy favorites against Texas, where they won by 1. Heavy favorites against Texas A&M, where they dodged, a last-minute defensive stand. I think this number is begging you to take Bama. Say, oh my goodness, it's Alabama. You have to lay it. It's only 6 and it's under a touchdown. I'm going to take Kansas State here. I think this is a feisty team, and I'm wondering if we see a performance, even with Will Anderson and Bryce Young out there, that is reminiscent of the Sugar Bowl back when Oklahoma beat Alabama pretty embarrassingly bad, and people were starting to panic about Nick Saban. I don't think it tells you anything about the future. I just think it tells you that this year's Bama team is not as good as years past. So I'm going to take Kansas State here. Deuce Vaughn running the ball. Will Howard kind of open up that pass game. I think they'll be ready for the challenge. So I'm going to go ahead and take Kansas State in those points.
That's my question is, can Will Howard do enough in the passing game to match what I think Bryce Young will be able to do. That's the bottom line. But it should be a great game. I'm excited to watch this.
The only other time Bama missed the playoff, they won and covered in their bowl game. So there's history there. Let's go to the college football playoff semifinals. The Fiesta Bowl first up. Number 3 TCU, number 2 Michigan. The Wolverines favored by 7.5. Jim Harbaugh has done just about everything now, but he has yet to win that big bowl game with Michigan. He's lost 5 straight, and each of the last 3 by 19 plus.
Was over a touchdown favorite here, so they should win this game. The question is whether or not they cover. Look, these are 2 of the best second-half teams in the country. I believe if you look at TCU, they're number 5, and I think Michigan's actually number 1. So whoever's got that lead at halftime, do not turn off this game. Someone could be able to come back. This comes down to simply this. Can TCU stop the rushing attack of Michigan and put this game on J.J. McCarthy's shoulders? Sonny Dykes has outwardly said this. That's what their game plan is, bottom line. J.J. McCarthy has proved that he is capable of doing that. I think the difference here is TCU's passing ability to really stress that Michigan secondary if they can protect Max Duggan and utilizing his legs at time to make some plays, because TCU can put up some big-time plays from Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, Tay Barber, all the playmakers. That's what's on the line here. I think TCU can keep this one close. I think they will test Michigan's secondary, but I think Michigan gets the win.
I've been back and forth on this game. I kind of hope you're right. I would love to see it come down to the wire. We haven't seen 2 playoff games at the same time in the same year be really compelling. We usually get one lopsided game or one that just doesn't look competitive. And this year, I think it might be this one. And I do think TCU is going to struggle to get off the field versus Michigan's run game. I mean, the physicality, I think, will be on display. The depth will be on display. I'm with you. I think Max Duggan and Quentin Johnston on the outside can put up some points. I think Kendre Miller could be a nice little change of pace to run the football. But ultimately, in the second half, when I do think that's when you might see TCU have to take more chances as they're trailing, I think Michigan really will rely on that run game, lean on them, pull away late. I think Michigan wins by 10, so I'll go ahead and lay the 7.5.
The biggest concern is probably that Joe Moore offensive line of Michigan. It's 2 years in a row now they've won the best offensive line in college football. It weighing on TCU's defensive front. They don't have great depth there. They don't have great size there. They're going to have to use additional bodies to put up around the line of scrimmage, which will leave them vulnerable on the outside. You saw Ohio State try to do it. What happened in Columbus? Michigan ended up stopping them out, in particular in the fourth quarter when they really ran away with it. That's probably my concern here by taking the points in TCU in this case. But again, we've seen TCU get down, and Max Duggan, there's something about that kid.
The other thing, too, about Michigan, just quickly, their mindset, they had the experience last year of getting embarrassed in the Orange Bowl. They have a completely different mindset of we're not just happy to be here. We want to win this thing. And I'm talking about all of it. They don't want to just get past Ohio State, Big Ten championship, get to the playoff. They want to win. So I think their mental focus is pretty sharp right now, too.
And Ohio State wants a rematch in the national championship game. The Buckeyes sneak into the college football playoff. They are getting 6.5 points against the Georgia Bulldogs.
And I'm going to take those 6.5 points. Something tells me this is a story of maybe redemption, maybe just a second chance for Ohio State, where now they are playing in for a shot for a national championship and a shot not only to get to that point, but maybe have a shot at beating Michigan, which would completely change the narrative around Ryan Day and Ohio State based on how the past 2 years have gone against that team up north. Now, they're not going to have Jackson Smith and Jigba. They're not going to have Travion Henderson, but they are going to have Marvin Harrison Jr., who's one of the best wide receivers in the country, along with the rest of the depth there. And I think it's a big game, in my opinion, of C.J. Stroud. You know, Danny, every week we come and we talk about the NFL draft. We hear these mock drafts that Ryan Wilson does such a great job. And Ryan mentioned it earlier this week. It's almost like C.J. Stroud has kind of flown under the radar, because maybe he hasn't had that signature game, that signature win that you're really looking for at this point. This would surely be it. If you could beat Georgia, knock them off, the defending champs, and then go beat Michigan. So I'm betting that you're going to see Ohio State here not just cover this number, but surprise a lot of people. I think they match up with Georgia pretty well, and they can go throw for throw with Stetson Bennett and the different tight ends they've got to find mismatches with and keep this thing within a number and outright win it.
I totally agree with you. I think this is a dangerous spot for Georgia, the defending national champion, who really hasn't been tested that much. The Tennessee game, they got in their backyard. Tennessee was a little flustered with the crowd noise. No doubt it'll be loud in Atlanta, but Ohio State will have plenty of representation there themselves. In the SEC championship game, LSU was throwing the ball on Georgia's defense. That's exactly what Ohio State wants to do, and I think it comes down to one question. How does Ohio State handle the physicality of Georgia's offensive and defensive fronts. And I think they'll be able to handle them okay, or at least well enough to give C.J. Stroud time enough to throw the football. And you mentioned Jackson Smith-Njigba being out. He's been out most of the season. He only played sparingly in a few games. They're kind of used to it. Marvin Harrison has stepped up there. Same thing with Travion Henderson being out. They've got a deep backfield that's got plenty of experience. So I'm not that concerned about the weapons that are not there. And I look at the weapons that are there and think they could thrive in this situation. This game is massive for C.J. Stroud, too. I think this is his opportunity to really vault up those draft boards or potentially take a step back. I think he'll thrive in this situation. I think they'll protect him. I think they'll scheme up some plays for him. I think they'll have some success.
You know, it's the backdrop. For the Orange Bowl, we changed up Clemson's orange.
Yeah.
But we didn't do that for Ohio State and
Clemson
Georgia. And the
fans
Peach
are
Bowl
gonna be
just
hot.
filled with red.
Yeah.
That's all it's going to be.
You guys calling Ohio State outright?
I'm saying Ohio State wins outright. I mean, look, maybe it's just because I want to buy into the narrative. I'm saying Ohio State and Michigan
that would be
end up
insane.
playing off for the
You've
national
seen Bama,
championship.
Georgia. They're not quite the same rivalry, but they've, these SEC teams have played against each other in the final. It wouldn't surprise me.
It'd be the most watched national championship game maybe ever. Based on how well they rated earlier this year, you'd have to think that somewhere ESPN, who holds the rights, is crossing their fingers, hoping that matchup would be the case.
Danny, you didn't quite answer it. Yes?
Yes.
Ohio State
win.
wins outright.
I'll take them.
Oh, man.
Give me the Buckeyes.
All right.
I know
Ohio
we just jinxed
State
it, though.
over Georgia, money line, say both of these guys. Big New Year's Eve, that's when the playoff takes place, but also the Sugar Bowl and the Music City Bowl, which Brady thinks it's going to go under the record low total of 31 between Iowa and Kentucky. They agree on the over in the Fiesta Bowl, over 58.5. And Ohio State not only to cover the 6.5, but to win and upset Georgia. There are no college football games on New Year's Day because it's on Sunday. They're going to get out of the way for the NFL. So these are Monday, January the 2nd, which, well, it's considered a holiday. Hopefully you all have the day off. You got Mississippi State, Illinois, ReliaQuest Bowl. That's the old Outback Bowl. Tulane, USC in the Cotton Bowl. Purdue a heavy underdog because they're missing a bunch of key players in the Citrus Bowl. And then the Rose Bowl, Penn State and Utah, 5 o'clock Eastern time. Let's pick them with Brady Quinn and Danny Kanell, and let's start with Mississippi State playing just a couple of weeks after the death of their head coach, Mike Leach.
Yeah, and obviously your heart goes out to the Leach family, the program, all the players. Everyone has been impacted by his passing. And I think part of me is wanting to pick this game with my heart because I was such a big Mike Leach fan, loved having the opportunity to cover his teams, talk to him, and have him share not only his football knowledge, but just his life knowledge that he was so willing to share at any moment with everyone he really touched and was around. But this is one, too, where I think if you look at the other side of this matchup in Illinois, you know, Ryan Walters did a phenomenal job with Illinois' defense this year. He's moving on to take over his head coaching job at Purdue. He's taking not only some analysts with him, but also some coaches on this staff. And you've got an Illinois team that's without their All-American cornerback, Devin Witherspoon, without their All-American safety, and Sidney Brown, who also happens to be the twin brother of Chase Brown, the outstanding running back at Illinois, second in the country in rushing yards, who's also not a part of this game. So I look at it there and just say, I think the air raid's going to be hard for a staff to prepare for when you've got your, defensive coordinator who's gone, taking a head coaching job, trying to replace that even in a few weeks' time. So I'll lay the 1 point here with Mississippi State.
Yeah, I'm with you. Obviously, this is one you're kind of, feeling with your heart more than looking at the analytical approach. But I also look at a Mississippi State team with a lot of momentum. They got the win over Ole Miss in that Egg Bowl, to get past that rivalry game. Will Rogers is an absolute stud at quarterback. I think he'll have a game. I think this is one of those games where you'll see a team playing for something more than themselves. And when you get players to believe in a cause and to honor their former coach, it's a ton of pressure on them. But I do think when you talk about bowls and motivation, who wants to be there, who really wants to do something special, I think Mississippi State is going to be all about trying to send off, Mike Leach and his family, at least pay a tribute to him with a solid finish to the season.
And Zach Arnett, first game as head coach. He'll be the head coach there moving forward, not just the interim head coach. They signed him to be the full-time head coach there at Mississippi State. A lot of people rooting for the Bulldogs this week. Let's move on to the Cotton Bowl. A lot of people going to be rooting for the Green Wave against the USC Trojans.
It's going to be interesting to see how healthy Caleb Williams' hamstring is. It felt like in the Pac-12 championship game, that's where the game turned. Once you took away his mobility, his ability to extend plays, Utah was on the attack. He was sacked 7 times in that game. You felt like he was a sitting duck back there. I think he'll be healthy enough to be able to utilize those legs and some of that downfield running skills. He's going to have to because he's not going to be with Jordan Addison, his top receiver. He's dealing with an ankle injury. And two of his offensive linemen, Voorhees, Nealon as well, both those guys are injured. Even though they're preparing for the draft, they would have played if they would have been healthy for this one. And so he's going to be without some key players, which makes this tough going up against the top 25 defense in Tulane. And look, Michael Pratt, he's had a productive year, very efficient. This USC defense has been awful. I'm betting on Caleb Williams, though, finding a way to win this game. So I'm going to lay the 2 points.
I'm gonna fade USC because of that defense that you mentioned. And Caleb Williams, he's incredible. I thought the Pac-12 championship may have been his greatest case for the Heisman. Look at what happened when he was a shell of himself. That team imploded. The offense couldn't do anything. And I think it was really a representation of what he's been about all season long. But I think this is, I'm curious where USC is mentally. They were this close to being on the verge of playing for a college football playoff. Then they get sent packing. And it's not a bad, second gift here, like a backup prize, but it's not playing in the playoffs. So I wonder where they are. And then on the flip side, Tulane, they have this massive turnaround. Willie Fritz, their head coach, is coming back. They've got their quarterback playing. I think this is their Super Bowl. I think their mindset is we can beat anybody out there. So I actually like Tulane to win this game outright.
Wow.
Haven't beaten a top 10 team since 1983, the Florida State Seminoles. Danny Kanell was a redshirt freshman.
Hey, I'm not that old.
Let's move on to
You believed him there. That's the sad part.
I did for a second. Gosh. Sorry.
Do you remember that game, though, in 83?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were a young pup.
I was.
7 or 8.
I wasn't even born yet.
Me either. Citrus Bowl, number 17 LSU is giving 2 touchdowns to Purdue. Why? Because Purdue's without a ton of top players.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell, he's not going to be a part of this matchup. So then Austin Burton gets his second start of his career. Charlie Jones, who led the Big Ten in receiving, which I'm not sure how many people know that. Everyone seemed to be enamored with Marvin Harrison Jr. Charlie Jones was phenomenal this year for Purdue. Payne Durham's going to be out for this one. Also some key pieces on defense, Jalen Graham, Corey Trice. It's tough to think that Purdue is going to be able to hold up versus an LSU team that, yes, is going to be without Biju Ojulari, Ali Gay, Roy as well on defense. But guess what? They still got Harold Perkins Jr. coming off the edge. So Jaden Daniels is starting at quarterback. I think LSU will be able to put up a lot of points in this one. I can't see Austin Burton really having the same productivity we saw from Aiden O'Connell. So not only do I like LSU in that big number here, I'm also going to play the under.
Come on, you guys aren't buying into the hottest coach in the country who's joining that staff, and Drew Brees, who's going to be drawing up plays in the dirt on the sideline.
For Deion Branch. Deion Branch got a good win for Louisville.
Exactly. I think this, to me, is just about too many points. Throughout the show we've done today, you notice I'll take a lot of underdogs. I think LSU wins this game. Purdue has a significant amount of challenge that they're going to be facing, as you guys well documented. But I think it's just too many points. I think LSU will win, but I think Purdue will put a pretty good fight. I go back to last year's Rose Bowl when you saw Ohio State play Utah and they had so many players opt out of that game. But show me the players that actually want to be there, that are going to play, and I think you'll see that type of performance from Purdue. I think they'll be competitive, but not enough to win the game, but enough to keep it inside that 14.5.
Ohio State has 5-star backups, though. Purdue has.
Well, and the other thing is that staff for Purdue has been impacted by it. Some of that group has already left. Brian Brom is going to stay on, though, and call plays for the offense at least. So kudos to him. I mean, that's
cool.
A stand-up thing to do, for your team before you move on to the next place.
Let's move on to our last game. It's the Rose Bowl, Penn State and Utah. Now, Penn State has all 10 wins against unranked teams. They have not beaten anybody the level of Utah.
Yeah, but they lost to 2 teams that are playing the college football playoffs. So if we really want to comb through these schedules, we can look at who Utah's played and beaten or lost to and say, okay, they beat USC a couple of times, but how really good is USC? These 2 teams are really evenly matched. I think you can make a case for both these quarterbacks. I love Cam Rising, his toughness, his ability to utilize his legs. It seems like when one tight end gets hurt for Utah, another one steps in. Dalton Kincaid is one of the best in the country. He'll be tough for Penn State to stop, especially without Joey Porter Jr., who's opted out to move on to the draft for Penn State. That being said, though, Utah's rush defense isn't the same as it's been in the past. Penn State can really run the football. Sean Clifford plays a factor in that as well. So I don't know. I think these teams are dead even. I'm going to go ahead and go with Penn State taking the 2.5 points here. I think they'll end up finding a way to win this game. More things are intact for this team as compared to Utah that, I'm kind of questioning really what their season looked like based on beating USC. How good is USC ultimately?
See, I like the way Chris was thinking. like, who has Penn State really beaten? Their most impressive performances come in losses, but they don't really have that signature win. At least Utah, I've seen what they can do at their best against some of the better competition in the country. I believe in Cam Rising, too. I think this will be a signature game for him where he'll have to put the workload on his shoulders, and he's proven capable time and time again, including against a USC team twice. Once when Kyle Whittingham said, I'm going to put the game on your hands, the first time they beat him at home with a 2-point conversion, and then again in the Pac-12 championship game, riding him there towards the end. And Kyle Whittingham, I think this team, mentioned the Rose Bowl last year, coming up short against Ohio State. I think they would love nothing more than be holding up that Rose Bowl trophy and holding those roses after the game. So I'll take Utah and lay the 2.5.
And that's the last bowl game before we get the college football national championship game a week from Monday. It'll be January the 9th, I believe. Let's go and recap the picks for January the 2nd here, the day after New Year's. It's lock unity there, the only lock unity of all the games we picked today. The only lock unity is Mississippi State -1 and the under 46 in the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa. Guys disagreeing on just about everything else except the over in the Rose Bowl.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.